ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to the show on this Sunday the 5th of July. I hope you guys had a happy 4th of July and everything. Have some barbecue this weekend and stuff. Anyway, it's the time of year for it. I'm going to try to explain to you guys why this is the end game, and in very simple logical terms. It's all got really to do with the way the whole thing was structured back in 1914 when they created the Federal Reserve System of banks, the central banks of the world. How they create money with the U.S. Central Bank is they actually have debt attached to it, the money that they create. It's not really money. I'm using a misterm money. It's actually currency. And its actual intrinsic value is zero. But why it's called a Ponzi scheme is as they create it, there's money owed on the money that's lent out. And that money accrues interest as time progresses. And this is the way the system actually functions with interest. Banks make interest on the money. The problem is they do not create the money to pay the interest that's owing on the money that's been borrowed in the past. So, in other words, when they create a dollar, say there's 1% interest per year, after the first year goes by, there's $1.10 owing. Well, they only originally created the dollar. They didn't create the actual 10 cents to pay off that interest. Now, as years goes by, even if there's just 1% interest owed on that dollar, the second year, there's 20 cents, but then there's interest owing on the 20 cents. And the third year would be 30 cents on that dollar, but then there's interest on 30 cents. Well, after 10 years, it would be up to a second dollar, and then you'd be paying interest on $2 instead of $1. It would double. This is accruing. It keeps growing exponentially. So in order to keep up with this debt, they have to keep constantly creating more money. But as they create more money, they're still not creating the interest owed on that money. And so it can't do anything except have an exponential curve of growth as time progresses into the future. It's one of those things, well, we'll worry about it next year, or we'll worry about it 5 years from now. We'll worry about it 10 years from now. And they keep kicking the can down the road, and this thing keeps growing. Well, eventually what happens is it reaches a certain point where they cannot pay the interest owing on the debt even. So what they have to do then is they have to lower the interest rate down. And that's where we are now. They cannot normalize interest rates because the debt has grown so large at this point that if they normalize interest rates, bring interest rates up to a normal level, which would be maybe 5% or something, they couldn't pay the interest owing on the debt that's outstanding. So it's like a man with his credit cards, and he's got to the point with those credit cards where he can't even pay the minimum on his credit cards. So he's taken out new credit cards in order to try to pay the minimum on all the other credit cards. That's the point we've got with the government. So this debt is growing exponentially. Now, the second part to all of this is there's like a wall between one economy and the other economy. We have the Wall Street type economy out there with the big banks that are too big to fail, and we have the Fed on that side of the fence, and they have a printing press, and they can just feed money into these banks, but they can't allow that money to escape into the other side of the wall, where this is the economy where we all live. How money is created in the side of that wall where we all live is what they do is they use the banking system to extend loans to people. So you get a loan from the bank, and the bank creates that money from thin air, and it keeps the money pumped up on our side of the wall. Constant lending. But in order for that to happen, you need to have a couple things working for you. You need to have a normalized interest rate policy so that the banks are going to make their cut with a normalized interest rates. You need to have an economy that's perking along where people want to borrow money. A guy's going to open a new restaurant, so he goes to the bank. Can I have a loan? Right? And the bank says sure, because the interest rate's like 5%. They're going to make a pretty good cut. But what happens when you start to get down near zero interest rate policy? Well, the banks start to tighten credit. What happens when the economy starts to turn sour? Well, the banks tighten credit even more. And what this does is our side of the fence, our side of the economy, this means that new money is not being generated on our side of the economy. But now on their side of the wall, where they got the printing press, they got new money being generated. But the bankers are grabbing that, snatching that new money, and they're just shoving it in to different accounts. So the Federal Reserve comes along, they create a whole bunch of new money, and the bankers just all go with the wheelbarrows of the money, heading off into their place and putting it into the back room and stacking it and making a bigger and bigger stack. Actually, that's not true. They're storing it in these accounts in the banks where it's only in digital form. It's almost like that money's not real. It's not making its way into the general economy. It's not chasing after goods and services. In fact, what it does is it's what's called a liquidity trap. The more money the Fed puts in there, the more money they stack in those accounts. And the accounts grow bigger and bigger and bigger. And they just keep socking it away. Well, you can't take that money and start to chase goods and services with it without it causing massive inflation. But right now, it's not causing a massive inflation. It's increasing the money supply, but it's not chasing after anything. It's just sitting in these accounts, and the accounts keep growing each time the Fed keeps pumping more in. So the money's like it's trapped on the other side of the fence. It's not making its way into the general economy at all. The general economy, because no lending's going on, no banks are actually out there. They've all tightened monetary policy, and the economy's sinking. Our side of the economy is actually drying up for money. It's actually going through a deflationary process right now. Where the other side of the economy out there, the Wall Street side of the economy, is being inflated by cheap, easy money from the Fed, and a lot of it's making its way into the stock market and pumping up the stock market. And right now, at this point, they can't raise interest rates because the national debt is so large that they wouldn't be able to pay the minimum payments on the interest owing on it. They have to keep interest rates low in order to keep paying what they owe. So we're trapped in this situation right now. It's only getting worse. What it's eventually going to lead to is a strangulation of the general economy. And, you remember not long ago, they came out and they heaped a whole bunch of money over our side of the fence. They realized this problem. They sent all these $1,200 checks, and they gave an extra $600 to unemployment insurance each week, for a while and everything. This is because they realized what this problem is. Now, we got another problem. It's just all problems. I know, it's all problems. But we got another huge problem is we got 50% of the workforce in America right now that don't have a job. A lot of them are even getting tired. I mean, at a certain point, when everybody's out there looking for work, and they got better credentials than you probably, and they're all chasing a job, and there's no work available, people just give up. Even though it's depressing to give up because people need money to live. Well, they've been kind of carrying through, with unemployment insurance and those checks that came from the government. All that's starting to run out now. And so this is going to mount a huge problem, because this is going to impact the majority of the population. These people are used to a certain lifestyle. When people get angry, they've done tests. When people have expectations, and those expectations aren't met, doesn't matter what the expectations are. If a man comes along and tells you, hey, I'm going to give you $100 tomorrow, He's just set your expectation at $100. And you take him at his word. You might owe somebody $100. You might say, well, I'm going to pay you tomorrow. The guy's going to give me $100. And then the guy comes and he only gives you 50. You're mad. Well, you wouldn't have been mad if he had come the day before and said, hey, I'm going to give you 50, and then he came the next day and gave you 50. You wouldn't be mad. But because he said he was going to give you 100 and he only gives you 50, you're mad because it doesn't meet your expectation. A person that's lived in poverty all their life, if they get a little bit of money, they feel happy. But a person who's lived a certain lifestyle, they have an expectation of continuing to live that lifestyle. The lifestyle where they always, if they want a beer, there's always a cold one in the fridge. They got their nice widescreen TV. They come home, kick their feet up. They got their job. They got all these things. They got their car. They got everything paid for and everything. They got their, and they have a certain expectation. If you haul their life away from them, and totally, so they don't know where their next meal's coming from. They can't pay their mortgage. They're going to get evicted. All these problems start suddenly barreling in on them from every different direction. Then life is not meeting their expectation. What they do then next is they look for a reason. They say to themselves, hey, what's caused this problem? And they look for somebody to blame or something to blame for the reason why everything's going sour on them. If you get the majority of the population start to feel this way, what you have is you have the fuel there. It's like if you have a dry field of wheat, and the sun comes out and bakes it and gets it really dry. One spark and poof. But that's the same way. If you get more than 50% of the population and suddenly life is not meeting their expectations, and that's the fuel. And then all it takes is just something to get it started. Now, we see the seeds for that are in place, and we see that how suddenly it can start. We see that because just a matter of weeks ago, cities were burning in the United States of America. It's settled back down now. But the resentment that's through the population about what's happening and life is not meeting their expectations right now, and they're looking for somebody to blame for this, is growing exponentially across the United States of America. And things are only getting worse because of this. And what's really causing it is this divide in the economy, where the whole structure of the economy from the ground up is not working properly. The banking systems out there that are supposed to lend money into the general economy, they're tightening credit right now. Big time. Then you got the Wall Street economy that's getting fatter and richer by the day, and the money's not making its way out in the Main Street. You got all these digits on the computers from these fat Wall Street guys. They got this tremendous amounts, trillions of dollars that they're sucking in, and they're just driving it into these accounts. It's meaningless. Just add a few more zeros. It doesn't mean anything. It's actually not worth anything. It's worth nothing. And the reason why it's worth nothing is as soon as it starts to try to chase anything, you try to buy anything with it, anything, you drive the price to infinity. And then you get your inflation on steroids. So as long as they're leaving it sit, they can count themselves as being uber wealthy, unbelievably wealthy, billions and billions and billions of dollars. But what good is it other than it's just digits? It's almost like Monopoly money or like World of Warcraft money. It's like a kid, he comes in, Mom, I got $1 million. He says, well, where? It's on World of Warcraft. Big deal, she says. Well, it's important to him. I guess it's the same thing with these bankers out there who got like $1 trillion in it's, well, not a trillion. They wouldn't have a trillion, but they might have $100 billion shoved away in these accounts. Look, Ma, I'm rich. But it's meaningless, because as soon as it tries to chase any products or any goods or services or anything, it's really not worth anything unless it has something tangible attached to it. Because the value of it is a floating value, dependent upon if you actually try to buy something with it. And what can you buy with $100 billion? Whatever you buy, you're going to move the price. Almost anything, you're going to move the price with that kind of money. Yeah, sure, the guy on the street's got $10 in his pocket. He's not going to move the price of anything. And he can actually go out and buy something with that money, proving the money that has value. And we do that every day all across the country. We use it as a medium of exchange. But we're not talking about the kind of money that they're hoarding. So that money's trapped. It's not going anywhere. At least not right now. You know? Of course, the thing is these guys at the top, with that kind of money, they're getting more and more all the time. At a certain point, they're going to want to make that money real. Real in the sense that it has some tangible value behind it. What can they buy? In order to make it real, you have to buy something with it. Something, anything. Even if it's a Bitcoin. You have to buy something. Or if it's gold, you have to buy something. Otherwise, all it is digits. Digital digits. Anyway, that's just something to think about. So the way things are actually structured is it's leading to a drying up of the general economy. And this is only going to go so far before the people revolt. Now, there's one or two options here. The powers that be can throw some money over their side of the fence to our side of the fence, like they did with the $1,200 checks and the extra $600 on the unemployment insurance. They can throw some money over here again to keep this going, keep this game going, or they can let it dry up further, to which point they could, if they let this game go too far, there could be, almost instantaneously, it could erupt across the country in the form of, I'm not even going to say mass protests. It would be worse than that. It would be torches and pitchforks. And I mean, the thing about it is once they let it go to that extent, can they get that genie back in the bottle? Wouldn't it be a better idea for them to throw some money over on this side of the fence before that happens, rather than wait until after? Because if you wait until after, you might not be able to control it. And you say, well, okay, we'll send out the National Guard, or we'll send out the military, or whatever, and we'll control it. Not if it breaks out in every big city and in every small town and in every hamlet. You ain't going to control it, because it's just too many bases to cover. It's as simple as that. And, we're facing very trying times, but we've never been in a circumstance like this. And if you think revolutions and things like that can't happen, they've happened through the past, through history, and country after country. And generally, they spring to life very, very quickly out of the blue. Now, there's one other thing I want to talk about while I'm here talking today. The stock market's getting ready to roll over and roll over big. It could roll over so fast that the Fed wouldn't be able to even react to it. With all these computer trading algorithms and everything, because it doesn't look like things are getting any better. And they've priced in perfection into the stock market at this point. It's been pumped up with cheap, easy money. And I mean, it's so overvalued, it's ridiculous. This week's not looking good. So the watch, I remember I told you guys we are on watch for a stock market crash. I'm increasing that to a warning. It's a warning now. It's a warning for look out for stock market crash, impending stock market crash. The stock market could lose 20, 30, 40%. overnight. And of course, I believe it won't go down too much. Probably when it starts to get around 40% or something, the Fed probably going to jump in and prop it back up again. But that's further inflation causing, I mean, it's just a vicious cycle we're in right now, and I don't see any end to it until something enormous is coming this way in the very near future. You guys stay tuned to my channel because I'm going to try to stay on top of it as these events develop. But we're right on the edge of something that's, I would call it scary. Now, as far as the virus, I'm going to talk about the virus front for a little bit. I did some calculations on my pocket calculator way back in March, around the 1st of March, which is months and months ago. Let's see, March, April, May, June, like 5 months ago. I did some calculations based on the rate the virus is spreading at, and everything. And I didn't make those calculations, I didn't announce those calculations or make them known. But what my calculations told me was that the virus would peak in the United States probably sometime in late August or early September. That's what my calculations gave me. Now, those are just my calculations, and they were based on the rate the virus was multiplying at in the world back then, and probably around and also with my calculations also showed that the virus would, once it peaks, that it'll start to go into decline rather quickly once it peaks. But we're going to see increasing numbers until it peaks. But now those are just my calculations. And so if we got this economy getting worse right up until the virus peaks in the end of August, early September, that's quite a while from now. It's about 2 months. 2 months more of this. With it getting worse and worse, with the economy getting worse and worse, I don't know how much more of this it can take before this whole thing just tips and the economy just sinks beneath the waves. And once it sinks beneath the waves, can you actually pull that Titanic back up again? I don't know, I mean, this is a real trying time that we're in. We're going to have to keep a watch on a lot of these things. Anyway, but that's what my calculations told me around probably the end of August. It would peak and then go into decline. Those are just my observations and my calculations. They got nothing to do with the official business that they're doing there. But let's see if I'm right. Anyway, listen, thank you guys for listening to this show. Give me a thumbs up. I'll be on tomorrow morning with a market report. Until then, we'll catch you guys later, and bye-bye.